Hey guys, hello and welcome to Naveed for Speed. In today's video, I am going to be showing you this car. It's the Cupra Formentor. It comes from the Spanish brand, the rebellious brand. And I'm actually a huge fan of Cupra and a huge fan of the Cupra Formentor because I like the way it looks and I like the design that Cupra have gone for, this rebellious, sharp, angular look. You can see that in things like its logo. Now, what is the Formentor? Well, Cupra, as we know, was part of SEAT and in 2018 went off to be its own standalone brand. And in 2020, it created this, the Formentor. It was the first car that was built entirely for Cupra. Before that, they had the Ateca, which was from SEAT, but this is the first pure Cupra car. And now it's had this 2024 update, and so this is the latest Cupra Formentor. And I'm going to be showing you around this car. I'm going to show you around the exterior of the car. I'll show you around the interior of the car, and then I'm going to take it out to drive. Now, what is the Cupra Formentor? Well, obviously, it's based on the Cupra Ateca, the SUV, but this particular car is shorter and longer. It has this more sporty stance, but it still has this sort of SUV aesthetic to it. It's supposed to be a little bit more of a dynamic drive, and it has a sloping roofline, which I'll show you when I take you around to the back of the car. But the Cupra Formentor is a popular car. In fact, it's the most popular car from the Cupra brand, and in 2023 they sold over 120,000, well, delivered over 120,000 Cupra Formentor models. So you can see this car everywhere, and the reason why that is, before I show you around the exterior, I'm going to tell you about the powertrains, because you can get this car in several different powertrains. You start with the entry-level 1.5 litre TSI, which produces 150 horsepower. Then you have the 1.5 litre mild hybrid, which also produces 150 horsepower, but it can give you a slightly better fuel economy. Then you have the 2 litre TSI, which produces 265 horsepower, or you can get the 2 litre TSI that produces 333 horsepower, and that's the one that I have here. Aside from that, there are also two plug-in hybrid versions that come with a 1.5 litre engine and a 19.7 kilowatt-hour battery, which is good for 60 miles of electric range, only on electric. Now, those cars produce 204 horsepower and 272 horsepower, and that's just based on the way that 1.5 litre engine is tuned. Now, you can get all of these different powertrains with a 6-speed or a 7-speed DSG-auto gearbox, unless you go for the entry-level 1.5 litre TSI, which comes with a 6-speed manual as standard. So that's all the powertrains for you, and of course there's something there for everybody. If you want a good benefit in kind tax rate, then you go for a plug-in hybrid. If you want fuel economy, yeah, plug-in hybrid. If you want something that's a little bit more affordable, if you want something that's a bit more economical, if you want something that's got torque, there's something there for everybody, I think. And that's probably one of the reasons why the Cupra Formentor has been so successful up until now. Later on in this video, I'll tell you a little bit more about the different trim levels that you get, because there's 6 different trim levels, and it depends on which powertrain you go for and what options you select. But the one I have here, I'll just quickly tell you, I have the 2 litre TSI 333 horsepower with 4 drives, so it's a 4-wheel drive version, and I've got the VZ1 spec, so it's the entry level of the VZ specs. If you go for a 2 litre TSI, you automatically get one of the VZ specs, and that's what I have here. Now, I'll show you around the exterior, but I'm going to start with this paintwork because it looks absolutely stunning in the sunlight. This paintwork is called Century Bronze Matte. It's an optional extra. The car I have here it costs around £46,300, and that optional extra paint is £2,000. And so it brings the price of this car up to around £48,500. But I think I really like this color. I really like this color that Cupra have started to incorporate into their cars. You can get this car in a load of metallic finishes and this matte finishes, and I really like the matte ones because they complement this sort of gloss black features and the bronze features that are dotted around the car. And of course, I'll show you more about the bronze features inside the car. But let me show you around the exterior of the car and some of the changes compared to the previous Formentor. We'll start at the front here, because I really quite like the changes that they've made here at the front, particularly with this shark nose front bonnet. I think it's become a bit more of a sharp design, a bit more of an angry design, a bit more of a aggressive design, and you can see that from some of these features, like this sort of C shape that comes along both sides. You got this sort of piece of trim here on the front, which kind of reminds me a little bit of the Leon, because the Leon has this sort of feature and it comes down to here, but this one extends all the way along there. You've also got these matrix LED headlights which come in this sort of triple triangle shape, which I remember seeing in the Cupra Terramar. Again, it ties in with that whole Cupra's angular, triangular aesthetic and their whole design language. I really quite like that. And of course, it complements this front badge as well. This sort of almost like a tribal logo. I think it looks really cool. They've really done well with that one. And then you've got this bonnet with its cool lines at the top, which you can see when you're driving along. I'll talk a little bit more about that when I take the car out to drive. Let's keep going towards the side of the car because I want to show you these alloy wheels. Now, if you get the V1 spec, you get 18-inch alloy wheels. But if you go V2 or above, you get 19-inch alloy wheels. Now, this particular designer wheel is called Sandstorm. You get this in the V2 or the VZ1 spec, and if you go further to the V3 or the VZ2 spec, you get Arctic wheels. They're just slightly different design, but personally I think these are the best designs. You can get them in silver, you can get them in bronze color as well. I really do quite like the bronze color because it matches and it complements the rest of the car, but that's what you have here. I really quite like this design. Let's keep going further towards the side of the car because I'll show you the side profile of the car. Now, I've already mentioned the Cupra Formentor is shorter than the Ateca and it's longer than the Ateca, and you can see the sloping roofline here at the back gives it a more coupe-ish look. But what's crucial is the dimensions of this car. It's 4.45 meters long, so 4 meters 45 centimeters, and it's 183 centimeters wide, roughly, or 184, but it's only 1.5 meters tall, or 151 centimeters tall. So it's not a tall car. You think of it as an SUV, but it's not much taller than many hatchbacks. And when you're sat inside, you're certainly the same eye level as most other road users that have saloons or hatchbacks. So in reality, it's a sort of hunkered down SUV, or you can think of it as a hatchback that's sort of jacked up a little bit. It still has that stance because it's quite wide and not that tall. Now, comparing this to the Terramar is longer, the Terramar is wider, and the Terramar is taller. In fact, the Terramar is like 8 centimeters taller than this, which is a considerable amount. So you can see how this is quite low, quite sporty, and it can provide you with a bit of a dynamic drive. As we move towards the back, it's this end-to-end or coast-to-coast rear light, which incorporates the Cupra badge, the Cupra logo. Again, I saw this in the Terramar, and I think it looks really cool. I certainly think it would look really cool for cars that are following you at night. But crucially, how do you open the boot? Well, the button's down here now. Before I take you into the boot, I do want to quickly mention this rear diffuser as well. Looks really good with these tailpipes either side of it. Really sporty, again, adds that whole sporty, dynamic aesthetic of the car. Let me tell you about the boot. So the boot is 450 litres depending on which version you go for. If you go for a car with four-wheel drive like I have here, then the boot is 420 litres. And if you go for one of the hybrid versions, the plug-in hybrids, then you only get 345 litres of boot space. But you've got space underneath the floor as well, and just like most Volkswagen vehicles, you can actually lower the boot floor, so you get a bit more room as well. And you've got a 60-40 split with the seats, and you've got a ski hatch so you can load through as well. So I think that's really quite convenient. So let me tell you about the interior of this new Cupra Formentor, because there are a few subtle changes in here, but in the grand scheme of things, it still feels the same as the previous Cupra. I think it's really good that that identity is still there. And as you look around the cabin, you can see a variety of materials, like you've got your leather with the bronze stitching in there, you've got your plastics, you've got your dark chrome in there, but crucially, you've got your bronze finishes all along places like the steering wheel, along the air vents, and along the sort of center console trim. Again, that's in keeping with Cupra's theme, and I think that's really quite cool. Let me talk about the steering wheel that you get in front of you. Because it's a leather steering wheel, again, it has the bronze stitching in there, perforated leather, and you get a flat bottom, and you get these buttons over here that you can use. Crucially, it's buttons and not those haptic feedback, touch sensitive things that you get in the Cupra Born. I really quite like that. Now, you also get these satellite buttons. On one side, you got the engine stop-start button, and on the other side, you've got your drive mode selector. That's really quite handy to have there, because you can just click through all the different driving modes that you've got, like your comfort and your performance and your Cupra mode, and you can even set a personalized, customizable mode as well. Now, if you've driven Volkswagen vehicles, you know that having that dynamic chassis control is quite quite good. It's quite it's recommended. And all the VZ spec cars, so the VZ1s, VZ2, VZ3 come with that as standard. So this being a VZ1 does have dynamic chassis control, and I'll tell you how the car feels like when I take it out on the road. Let me tell you about the central infotainment system. Now, this infotainment system is a new infotainment system. It comes in this 12.9-inch screen, and it's Volkswagen's new system. So it's just a little bit better than before, a little bit more responsive. You can change your drive modes over here. You've got your climate controls down here as a sort of shortcut. Now, I don't really like them being in the touchscreen, but because they're at a shortcut down here, it's really good. And they are quite intuitive. You can easily click to what you need to get to. And down here, you've got these touch sensitive slider button things which nobody really likes. Let me just turn the climate control on for you for a second, and you can use these to change the temperatures and stuff. But I found it's just easier to just click them like this rather than, you know, they can be a bit fiddly. The volume one is a little bit weird. I think that you do have to slide, but the climate control ones you do just touch, and they are backlit now as well, so you can see them at night. Now, the thing about this infotainment screen, from where the driver is sat, you are sat quite low in this car. It's not, you know, a high SUV. As I'm sat here, I can see most of the car around me. The bonnet's in front of me. And if you do sit quite low, if I put the seat low, I find that for some drivers, this screen might come in their view. So, but you can adjust the seats manually, and you can put them higher so you can get a better view. So I'll just do that. And this VZ1 spec car has electronically adjustable seats with memory function. Now, let me tell you about the different specs. So the V1 spec, the entry-level spec, that comes with manually adjustable seats, you get front and rear parking sensors, and you get 18-inch alloy wheels. Now, if you upgrade to the V2 spec, you get electronically adjustable seats. You've got a rear parking front and rear parking sensors, and a rear parking camera. You've got 19-inch alloy wheels. You get these bucket seats, which I think look really quite cool, with this Dinamica material in here, a bit like Alcantara, and you've got the stitching in there as well. Cupra logo embossed in there as well. I think it looks really cool. Now, if you go for the V3 spec, that's where you get your top view. So that's where you get your top view, where you can park, but you know, it gives you a view all around the car so that you can park, and you get a few more safety features like your lane keep assist, but it gives you warning when you're moving lanes or you're getting out of the car and a car's coming past. Now, if you go for the V1 spec, VZ1, that's quite similar to the V2 spec. So that's what I have here. It's got these bucket seats, it's got manually adjustable seats, 19-inch alloy wheels, it's got the rear camera, it's also got electronic tailgate. That's the VZ1 spec. If, like I mentioned, if you go for one of the 2-litre TSI engines, you automatically get a VZ spec car. If you go for the VZ2 spec, that's quite similar to the V3 spec. So you get the top view, you get the safety features, a few extras there. If you go for the VZ3 spec, now you can get Sennheiser sound system with 12 speaker sounds all around the car. You can get performance brakes depending on which version of the car you go for, whether it's a hybrid or not. You get either Brembo brakes or Akebono brakes. And you get the Cupra seats, which have the carbon fiber at the back as well. So that's what you get in the VZ3. And then if you go, there's even a VZ first edition version of the car, and that gives you a panoramic sunroof as standard. But in all of the ordinary cars, so your V1 and V cars and your VZ cars, you don't get that panoramic sunroof as standard, but you can spec it as an optional extra. Like I mentioned before, the VZ cars, all of them come with dynamic chassis control, and I think that is quite good. This car that I have has that dynamic chassis control. But I'll just very quickly show you around a little bit more of the interior of this car, because you've got this center console area over here. Now, this center console, well, this full area has been redesigned. It does look quite similar still. It has the contrasting stitching in there, which I think is really good. A few little areas to store stuff, like you've got the cup holders over here, and you've got the storage area back here. To my knowledge, that's changed, because that seemed to be a little bit higher in the older Formentor. You've also got wireless charging pad at the front here, USB-C charging points, and of course you can connect your phone up using a wire. Car has Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, all the convenient features that you need for everyday life, because this car is designed for not just to be a dynamic car. It's designed to give you that everyday practicality. It's designed to be quite comfortable on the road, especially around the city. So I think, like I mentioned before, there might be something there for everybody depending on your needs. But anyway, I'll take the car out to drive and I'll tell you exactly what it feels like. What a lovely day. The sun's out. I'm in a Cupra Formentor in the countryside on these slightly bendy roads, twisty roads, bumpy roads. It's quite nice. But before I tell you what the Cupra Formentor is like to drive, I do want to mention a couple of things. The first is that name, the Formentor. It does sound quite aggressive and quite scary. Maybe something like a villain in a Harry Potter movie. But it actually is just the name of the peninsula in Mallorca. Cupra do tend to name their cars after places in Spain. That's obviously to further enhance that sort of Spanish heritage, that sort of identity that they have. I want to mention the rear seats. So the rear seats are roomy enough to have 5 passengers, but you might struggle to have, to have 3 passengers back there, but you might struggle to have 3 adults. It might be 2 adults and a child. It is a little bit tighter back there. It doesn't have the same sort of room back there as the Cupra Ateca, but it's still capable of being comfortable if you have 2 passengers back there. Now let me tell you what it's like to drive, because out here on the road, it does feel quite nice. I've been driving this car around the city, and I've been driving it, I'd say, about 50% of the time on the city, 50% of the time on the motorway, and the fuel economy figures that I've been getting are just under 30 miles per gallon. If you are driving this car around the city alone, then you can expect low 20 miles per gallon. And obviously, if you're driving it mostly on the motorway, then you'll get better fuel economy there. But as a sort of average, I've been getting just under 30 miles per gallon. Now, this car is quoted to give you anywhere between 30 and 32 miles per gallon. But of course, if you go for the 1.5 litre engine, whether it's the ordinary, the TSI or the mild hybrid, then you can expect your fuel economy to be in the 40s. And obviously, if you go for a plug-in hybrid, then it can be, quite a lot more than that. How does it feel then to drive? I'm going to start with the driving position, because like I mentioned, the driving position of the Formentor isn't high. You are quite low down. Your eye line is same as other road users that are driving, for example, hatchbacks. So you're not sat quite high, and I feel like I'm sat quite low in the car as well. I feel like the car is quite high around me. I mentioned that already when I was talking about the interior, but crucially, when you are, let's say for example, reversing and you are looking in these side mirrors, you can see, because the car has these sort of muscular rear haunches, you can see that above your eye line. It feels like the most of the car is above you, so you are sat quite low down. And these mirrors, I do have to mention, aren't the best, because whilst they are in a really nice, exciting shape, they are quite small. So just bear that in mind. But you've got your parking sensors, you've got your rear-facing camera, depending on which spec you go for, and if you go for one of the highest specs, you've got the top view as well. So parking shouldn't be that much of an issue for you. In terms of the steering, now this car comes with a progressive steering wheel, so that means that when you are turning the steering wheel at higher speeds, it'll change the ratio slightly, so it will have less of an effect. And if you are changing speeds if you are turning the wheel at lower speeds, then it will turn accordingly. Now, I've found the steering wheel to be actually a nice way. It doesn't feel too light and it doesn't feel too heavy. Of course, when you start to drive it a little bit more dynamically in some of the other driving modes, then you will start to find that it is a little bit heavier. What does the car sound like? Now, I don't know if the mic will be able to pick up that sound, but you can certainly hear that intake sound, and you can hear a little bit of an exhaust sound. But when you put the car into Cupra mode, for example, now you start to get a little bit more of a nicer tone. Now, I'm not entirely sure if that's artificial noise that's coming through the speakers or if it is actually the sound of the exhaust. Let me know in the comments if you know that, because I've not had a chance to check that. Usually when I'm driving these cars, I'll have them for quite a lot longer, but this particular car I've only had for a few days, so I've not been able to check that. But it is quite satisfying from where I'm sat. Now, what is it like in terms of its in terms of the suspension, in terms of its comfort, I found this car, I've just put it back into comfort mode, I found this car to be a little bit more firm, especially when going over the bumps, driving around the city. But if that is the trade-off for having grip when you need it, especially with this car having this low stance, especially with this car having a bit more of a dynamic style, then I don't mind that. It's perfectly acceptable, the amount of discomfort you get from going over bumps in comfort mode, but I would say still it is on the firm side, which is probably why I think having that dynamic chassis control is quite convenient, because when you do start to put this car into some of the more dynamic modes, like your sport mode, your performance modes, then you will start to feel like, you know, now it's getting a bit more uncomfortable, but usually that will happen when you're on smoother roads. What is my experience of this car then? I mean, I drove the previous Formentor. I took that on a road trip to Scotland, so I spent quite a lot of time in that. And this car, upon immediate glance, did not remind me much of that car, because it has so many changes style-wise, particularly on the exterior, that it felt like a totally new car. But as soon as I got in the car and I started driving it, started operating the steering wheel, the feeling that I got of this car, it reminded me of that trip. So it does remind me of that previous Formentor. And that's a good thing, because the previous Formentor was a good car and it was a popular car. That's why it sold a lot. But if you are looking to buy a Formentor, just know that there is a variety and something for everybody. There is something for people who want better fuel economy. There is stuff for people who want better performance. There is something there for people who want a bit more of a look, you know, a relaxing interior, a bit more of a sporty interior. There's something there for everybody, I think, and that's why I feel like, depending on, I mean, the previous Formentor was quite successful. I feel like this one will be quite successful as well. Let me tell you a little bit about the prices, because I haven't mentioned the prices. But if we start at the V1 version of the car, if you get that in, I'll tell you the prices for all of the specs in the 1.5 litre TSI, because that's the entry-level version. The V1 version starts at around £34,000, and the V2 version starts at around £36,500. V3 can cost you around £38,500. But if you start to go for the VZ specs, so the VZ1 onwards, then you're looking at, the starting point is the 2 litre TSI engine that produces 265 horsepower. Now for that, the VZ1 starts at around just over £41,500. It's about 41,800. If you go for a VZ2, then we're looking at around £44,500. And if you go for a VZ3, then we're looking at around £47,500. And then the first edition VZ version, that's over £50,000. And obviously you can spec optional extras. There's a fair few accessories that you can buy with this car. You can get bike rack on the top as well. You can get bike rack for the rear. If you get your optional extra panoramic sunroof, that will cost you extra. You've got your matte paints as well. This Century bronze matte costs to just over £2,000. So it can easily add up in terms of price, but you can actually find good value there. If you go for one of the entry-level specs, if you go for one of the lower specs, I think this VZ1 version kind of strikes the balance nicely, because you've got the dynamic chassis control here as well. You've got all the features that you get in the V2 spec, and you get your choice of engines. The engine that I have obviously is the 2 litre TSI that produces 333 horsepower with 4-drive. So it's got the 4-wheel drive. Now, again, I've not had any problems with grip in this car. I feel like it's perfectly fine for everyday use. It comes with loads of different driving modes, including an off-road mode, and it comes with a drift mode. Now, again, you're probably not going to be using that much in everyday life. In fact, I don't think there's ever a situation where you should really be using it out on the road, but you've got it there if ever you wanted to take this car on track. So it does add to the sporty appeal that you have with this car. But overall, I think the Cupra Formentor is as good as it's ever been. It looks amazing now, even better than it looked before. And I think if it's something that you are looking to go for, then I hope this video has helped you to make that decision. But anyway, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you in the next video. Please subscribe to this channel so I can continue making these videos for you. Thank you and take care.